Round to the yard door, the footman said, and shut the great door of Marbury Hall in his face without waiting to see whether he had understood. The Duke of Elmsworth stood on the top step in the rain, in a carter's coat he had borrowed off a man at Charing Cross, with his hat gone and his hands cut from 3 miles of leading a lamed horse, and discovered that he was not, in fact, angry. He was interested. They had been preparing for him for 3 weeks. He knew that, because Sir Josiah Cleeve's letters had told him so. At length, twice a week since Michaelmas. There would be a dinner tomorrow, and a shoot on Friday, and a daughter. Alden went round to the yard door. The kitchen passage at Marbury smelled of wet stone and roasting meat, and the particular tension of a house that is expecting somebody important. He was set to stand inside the door, dripping, while a maid went to find the housekeeper, and the housekeeper came and looked him over the way one looks over a dog of uncertain ownership. "You are from Elmsworth?" "I am." That was perfectly true. With word of His Grace's arrival. He considered several answers. "His Grace will be here tomorrow," he said, "about noon." Mrs. Gaunt sniffed. "Then you may wait. Sir Josiah will want it from your own mouth, and he is at his accounts. Stand off the flags there, you are making a puddle." So he stood. Nobody offered him anything. It was 9:15 at night. He had eaten a bread roll at Charing Cross 11 hours before, and his hands had begun to stiffen. A young lady came through the passage in yellow silk with a candle, on her way from one warm room to another, and stopped and put the back of her wrist to her nose. "Gaunt, what is that in the passage?" "A man from Elmsworth, Miss Selina." "Well, he cannot stand there tomorrow. Papa says the corridor is to be lined with the good chairs." She went by without looking at him again, and her voice came back round the corner, pleased with itself. "Tell it not to touch anything." Alden stood in his puddle and thought about the 11 letters in his desk at home, and the 3 weeks of preparation, and the fact that not one soul in this house had thought to ask a soaked man at the door whether he had eaten. Then somebody put a chair down behind him. It was a plain kitchen chair, and it was set down firmly, the way a thing is set down by a person who has decided something and would rather not be argued with. "Sit on that before you fall on it," she said. She was perhaps 24, in a grey gown that had been turned at the cuffs, and a shawl that had been darned by somebody with more patience than thread. Not a servant. The gown was too good and the hands too clean. Not a daughter of the house either. No daughter of a house is that thin about the shoulders. "Miss, sit down." She went away and came back with a mug of small beer and a plate with bread on it and a piece of cheese the size of a fist, and put them into his hands before he had finished getting to his feet again. "The beer is cold and the bread is yesterday's." "It is what I could get without asking, and asking would have taken 20 minutes and produced nothing." Alden sat down. He was not accustomed to being told to, and he found he did it very readily. "Your hands are cut," she said. The bridle went. "I led him 3 miles. Give me the left one, it is worse." And the Duke of Elmsworth, who had been attended for 11 years by a valet who did not speak unless spoken to, sat on a kitchen chair in a back passage, and let a stranger turn his hand over to the firelight and pick grit out of it with a needle, and bind it up with a strip of clean linen out of her own pocket. "You have done this before. I am the person in this house who does things." She said it without any self-pity whatever, which he noticed, because self-pity was very nearly the only tone he had ever heard used about hardship. Phoebe stammered. "My mother was Sir Josiah's cousin. I have lived here 10 years and I am not paid, which is a great convenience to everybody, since one cannot dismiss what one does not employ," he said. "Alden, what? That will do for tonight." She raised an eyebrow at him and let it go, which he liked enormously, and tied off the linen. "Eat," she said. "Nobody will come for another half hour. Sir Josiah is practicing. His speech of welcome." Phoebe sat down on the corner of the table, which he suspected she would not have done in any other room in the house. "For the Duke. It is 4 minutes long, and it has been 4 minutes long since Tuesday, though the middle keeps changing. You do not sound impressed." "I am not permitted to be anything, so I am privately whatever I choose." She looked at the fire. "I am sorry for him, if you want the truth." Alden set down the mug. "For the Duke. He is 38 and unmarried, and he has a great deal of money, and every soul in this house has spent 3 weeks arranging the furniture of his opinion of us. Selina has learned 2 new songs. The good chairs are coming out of the store. My uncle has counted the pineapples. She shrugged. He will come tomorrow and be given the best of everything, and not one person here will ask whether he is tired, or whether he has eaten, or what he thinks about anything at all. They do not want a man. They want a title with a man attached, and I should think that gets very cold in the end. The fire cracked. Rain went along the high window. Yes, said Alden. I should think it does. She turned her head and looked at him properly then, and something went between them that he was quite unable to account for and did not, in that moment, wish to. Which was, of course, when the passage door opened and Sir Josiah Cleeve came through it and found his wife's cousin's daughter sitting on the kitchen table, feeding a vagrant at his own fire. It went very fast, the way these things do when a man has been rehearsing a speech all evening and has found somewhere at last to put the feeling. Sir Josiah did not ask a single question. He saw a wet stranger in a carter's coat with his boots by the fire, and a girl who had fed him out of the larder without leave, on the night before the most important day of that house's history, and he began at the top of his voice and did not come down from it. Alden got to his feet. Sir, if you will hear me one moment, you will hold your tongue in my kitchen. Sir Josiah did not even look at him. Gaunt. Put it out. And you miss. You have eaten my bread 10 years, and you repay me by opening my house to the road. Your box will be at the door in 1/4 of an hour. I will not have you under this roof another night. Uncle, 1/4 of an hour. Alden stood in the passage with his hands curling and made, in about 2 seconds, the coldest calculation of his life, that if he named himself now, in this kitchen, before this man, then for the rest of Phoebe Stannard's days every person in the county would say she had been kind to a duke, because she had known. He held his tongue. It cost him more than anything had cost him in years. They were put out of the yard door together at 9:30, into the rain, with her box carried out by a footman who would not meet her eye. She did not cry. She stood in the wet yard and looked back once at a house she had lived in for 10 years, and then she took the handle of her box and said, in a voice that was almost steady, "There is an inn at the bottom of the lane. The bell. It is a mile." Alden took the box out of her hand without asking and carried it a mile in the rain. They did not talk much. Once she said, "You should not have spoken. He would have let you stand by the fire till morning if you had kept quiet," and Alden said, "Then he would have had one thing to his credit," and she laughed, unwillingly, out in the dark. At the bell he called for a private parlour and a fire and a supper, and put money on the table before she could look at it. "I cannot let you. It is not charity. It is the fee for a surgeon and a bed of clean linen, and I have had both off you tonight at no charge whatsoever, which leaves me in your debt by some margin." He set a chair for her at the fire, which was the first time in 10 years anybody had. "Sit down, Miss Stannard. Eat something. You are white as the cloth." She sat down. She ate, and after a while she told him, quite simply, what her 10 years had been: the running of a house she did not own, the nursing of an aunt who had died, the mending, the accounts nobody thanked her for, the offers of marriage she had never received because a girl without a portion is invisible at a county ball. She said it all in the flat, unpitying voice of somebody reciting a road she had walked so often that it no longer had a view. "And tomorrow," said Alden, "there is a coach 11. I have £4 and a character I shall have to write myself, and there is an office in town that places nursery governesses." She turned the mug in her hands. "I shall do very well. People have started with less." He looked at her across the fire and could not, for a moment, trust his voice at all. "Miss Stannard," he said at last, "whatever you hear tomorrow, whatever you find out, and whatever you think of me for it, I want you to remember one thing. You were kind tonight to a man who you were entirely certain could do nothing for you. There is no other kind of proof in this world. Nothing else counts." She frowned at him. "That is a very strange thing to say." "Yes," he agreed, "it is." At noon on the Thursday, the carriage of the Duke of Elmsworth came up the Marbury Avenue with 2 outriders, and the whole household was drawn up on the gravel in the November sun. Sir Josiah in a new coat, Miss Selina in white with her music under her arm, Mrs. Gaunt, the footman, the good chairs standing in the corridor behind them like a guard of honor. The steps came down. Alden got out in a plain dark coat that had cost more than the avenue. Nobody moved for what he judged to be 4 full seconds. So Josiah's face went through a sequence of colors that Alden had never previously seen upon a human being, and Miss Selina's music slid out from under her arm and lay on the gravel, and Mrs. Gaunt made a small sound. "Your Grace," Sir Josiah began. "Your Grace, aye, there has been the most dreadful." "There has been nothing dreadful at all," said Alden. "There has been an entirely accurate account of this household given free, and I am obliged for it." He drew on one glove. "I shall not stay to dinner. I do not think either of us would enjoy it. I came a day early because I have learned that a house shows you what it is on the day it is not expecting you, and Marbury has been remarkably informative." "Your Grace, if I had known—" "Yes," said Alden. "That is precisely the difficulty. You were kind to nobody last night, and everybody here would have been kind to me. One woman in this house was kind to a man in a wet coat who could do nothing whatever for her, and you put her out of the door at 9:30 with her box." He looked without hurry along the row of faces. "Where is Miss Stannard?" She has gone, Your Grace." "She did not go. You put her out." "And I went with her, sir, since I was the vagrant, and I carried her box a mile in the rain. And it is the only thing done at Marbury this week that I intend to remember." He got back into the carriage. The good chairs stayed in the corridor. Phoebe was in the yard of the Bell with her box beside her, and the 11 o'clock coach 8 minutes off, and she looked up at the sound of outriders, and then she stood very still. Alden came across the cobbles and stopped a proper distance from her and took off his hat. "Alden Harbrook," he said. "Elmsworth. I ought to have told you in the passage and I did not, and if you are angry you are entitled to every scrap of it." She was white. "You let me pity you." "You did not pity me. You fed me and bound my hand and told me the exact truth about a house full of people who were preparing to lie to me for a fortnight." He turned his hat over in his hands. "I have been Elmsworth for 11 years, Miss Stannard, and in 11 years no one has given me a chair. They give me the best chair. It is not the same article, and last night I found out how much I had wanted the other one." Ostler had stopped working. The coach horn sounded somewhere down the road, and neither of them moved. "I am not going to offer you a settlement," Alden said, "or a cottage or a place, because you would take none of them and you would be right. I am going to ask you for something instead. Do not get on that coach. Stay a fortnight at my aunt's house at Ferring, which is respectable to the point of dullness, and let me come and see you there as a man with no house and no title and nothing to recommend him but a bandaged hand." He drew breath. "And at the end of it, if you can bear me, I mean to ask you to marry me, and I should like very much to be refused honestly rather than accepted for 4,000 a year." Phoebe Stannard put her hand up to her mouth. Then she put it down again and looked at him steadily, in the way she had looked at him across a kitchen fire when he was nothing at all, and said, "You will have to carry the box again. I am not paying the boy 2pence when there is a duke standing idle." Alden laughed out loud in the yard of the Bell, which he had not done in a very long while, and picked up the box. They were married at Ferring in the spring quietly, with his aunt weeping into a very good handkerchief. Sir Josiah Cleeve wrote 9 letters, and the Duchess of Elmsworth answered the 9th kindly and briefly, and sent his daughter a wedding present when she married a clergyman 2 years later, which was more than anybody expected of her, and exactly what everybody who knew her expected of her. And at Elmsworth from that year on there was a standing order in the house, given by the Duke himself and never once relaxed, that any man or woman who comes to any door of it, in any coat, at any hour, is to be brought in out of the weather and given a chair and something hot before a single soul asks them their business. The Duke was known to say that he had learned it from his wife, in a back passage, on the worst night of his life, and that it had turned out to be the best.